Hi, this is Paul Yeager. This is the MTOM Show podcast, a production of Iowa PBS and the Market to Market TV show. Land. It's been featured many times on this podcast. We've talked about land sales, who's owning land, who's buying land. Today we're going to get into strategies about the buying, selling, and what to do with some of the money, specifically on capital gains. We're going to talk about a DST. Going to leave it at that. That's the tease. You're going to want to find out what that is. What are some scenarios if you say want to buy that section and you live here or back there? What are your options? What should you do? Say there's 4 of you in a family. None of you are any more involved in the farm. Maybe one of you is. Again, we'll talk about those scenarios. Our guest today is Ronnie Richardson. He is with the National Land Realty Company. He's based in Mississippi, so he has perspective from outside the Corn Belt. But we find out how similar ag land is across the country. He's been doing this since the mid-90s, buying and selling land. We're going to discuss some strategies and hopefully help you out as you try to make a plan in your family. Yes, we know money and politics and religion are all things you shouldn't talk about, but maybe this is something you should talk about with your siblings. That's today's episode of the MTOM Show podcast. Feedback for me, hit me up on email, paul.yeager, Yeager, at iowapbs.org. I always get caught talking sports, but Dak Prescott winning in Monday Night Football, big deal for you?
You know, my daughter lives in Dallas anyway, so we're Cowboys fans. And Dak, and I went to Mississippi State, got out a long time ago, but Dak was a quarterback there, of course, after I left. And so, yes, we're Dak fans and we're Cowboys fans and we're Alabama fans. My daughter went to Alabama, worked for Nick Saban for 4 years. So we're SEC, Alabama, Mississippi State. They're Alabama fanatics. I'm just a Mississippi State fan. So.
Fair enough. So we don't talk the week of the game whenever the schedules line up when Mississippi State and Alabama might play.
You know, when Texas A&M was whooping on Alabama a couple years in a row, I had to go outside during that game several times because it was so pretentious in there. Because I'm a Johnny Manziel fan, and I was hollering for Texas A&M, and it didn't go well because they really are. They're crazy about Alabama. So
well, and Johnny Manziel, that's a whole nother discussion we could get into, Ronnie, about not studying the playbook and not looking at film when he got to the NFL. But studying is something. So you said you went to Mississippi State. What else is your background there?
When I got out of Mississippi State, I had a degree in marketing, and then I went to Mississippi College at night school for 3 years and got a master's degree in business with an emphasis in federal taxation. After that, in 1991, I bought a piece of property for, I think I made $5,000 on it in 7 days, and I said, this is for me. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life, is be in the real estate business. And I went to work for the land guy, a guy in Mississippi that was known as the land guy. And in 1995, I opened my own company and decided I was just going to make a living selling land. And I didn't really have a mentor. I didn't really have a lot of training. I went to the school of hard knocks when you start talking about land brokerage and just figured it out.
You sit in Mississippi right now. So tell me, is that where you started then too?
Yes, right.
In 95. All right. Give me the story of 1995 when you start. What's the scenario of land ownership? Who's owning land? What'd you get yourself into that is different than today?
Well, when in 1995, mostly what we were selling was recreational land here in Mississippi, which is a 200-acre hardwood tract or pine tract that a guy was going to build a little cabin on, and that's his weekend getaway. And we were selling that land for $250 an acre. And you know, even at that time, people would call the office and say, $250 an acre, is it gold under it or something? And then you'd have to deflect that. And, you know, but then all the people that bought in that period, you know, they're looking like the smartest people in the world in today's world. Because now, even a recreational tract here in Mississippi would be $3,000-$4,000 an acre. Same tract of land that was $250 an acre in 1995. And we just went through the struggles of owning a real estate brokerage. Sometimes it's feast or famine. Sometimes you have more money than you think you ever going to spend, and other times you're living in your truck because you can't pay the rent. And so it's been a struggle, and I learned a whole lot, and I didn't have nobody to pick me up when we were down, and it worked out. I mean, it's the thing I would say to people is this is not easy. It looks easy. It looks easy when we're riding around in the truck and we're dragging a four-wheeler around, and they think it's fun riding through a bean field and showing a guy a farm or something, but it's work. And if you answer your phone and you take care of your customers, before you know it, you'll start getting referrals. And that's what happened in 1995, 6, 7. And life goes along good, and all of a sudden you look up and a 2007 hits and a 2008 hits. And then you realize why everybody's not in the real estate business.
That's when the sleeping in the truck was more of a possibility.
Yeah, it was more of a reality.
Yeah. What was the customer like in 95 compared to today? Is it the same type of person?
It's the same type of person. Our bread and butter person that we make a living off of is a self-employed guy, business owner that can spend $500,000 to $1 million in the recreational side of life. On the farm side of life, it's institutional buyers are more buying than neighbors are more than somebody wanting to get into farming, because with prices today in the farmland industry, it is tough to break into that. I mean, you can't pay $20,000 an acre and farm your way out of it. You can't do it. It's not $20,000 in Mississippi, but in Iowa, where you are, it certainly is.
Well, I guess that's always a constant email or question that we get on Market to Market is no beginning farmer can get in at these prices.
No.
So you agree that is a true statement? It's hard for someone with zero capital or zero whatever to get into agriculture. That's true. That's not just an Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota thing.
No, that's absolutely not an Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota thing. It's a Mississippi thing, because land in Mississippi, let's just say it's $7,500 an acre. Well, take a guy that gets out of Mississippi State with an ag degree and wants to be a farmer. I mean, he has no money unless he has some major league backing or he inherited a farm. It is impossible to buy 1,000 acres and farm beans or rice or corn on it and farm your way out of it, especially in today's world with the interest rates. I mean, you think about borrowing, a couple $1 million at 8%. You're talking about $160,000 a year of interest carry. And then he's got to have equipment and seed, all the stuff that it takes.
It doesn't get cheaper anywhere,
No.
is what you're saying. It doesn't pencil out differently for different crops or different regions.
No.
Okay, so I'm asking you about the client, the different. When you say it's the same person who buys the 200 that's got all the nice trees that they build a cabin, that person's still existing? Are they different in the sense of they look at that hunting cabin or weekend cabin as a weekend and a hunting, or is that an investment for them that might just happen to serve as a hunting and fishing base?
Paul, we try to encourage them to call it an investment more than anything else. Let's hold this. Let's grow the timber. Let's sign up for the government program on the CRP. If we can put 50 acres in CRP, let's manage it as an investment, because what we've seen is the land prices continue to increase just then follow inflation, and so why would you not want to maximize that asset in your portfolio? Now, you still get to go out there and enjoy it on the weekend, of course.
Right. You mentioned 07, 08, 09. Are we repeating those years right now?
I don't think so. I don't see it. Commodity prices, the futures for the spring look good. There was so much money that was printed during COVID. We're going to see some inflation, but I don't think we're going to see what we saw in 07 and 08. We're not gearing up for that. We don't anticipate that.
How well in '06 and '05 could you see what was happening in '07 and '08? Did you have that breath that turning every page going, is today the day?
In '07, I did see that because the feds were raising a quarter, and they would not stop. And I know this because I had a huge loan. I was building a big building in Pensacola, Florida. And when I got done, I had about $35 million borrowed, and it was 10.75% interest. Ooh. And so, you can count the interest daily, and that's Sunday too. I mean, I didn't sleep the whole summer of 2007 hoping, but I could see that accelerated inflation. Accelerated increase in interest rates that it was just going way too fast. Yeah. But I don't see that now. It's just like it's more calculated.
However, let's accelerate this a moment. What if in 2023 we still see another interest rate? What if we get into early 2024 and another rate hike? Then what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was interviewed with another company not long ago, and we talked about historical highs as the interviewer was talking about. We're at historical highs in interest rates, and the answer is no, we're not. We're at historical normals. We've been at historical lows is what makes it look like it's off the chart, but it's not off the chart. It's okay right now. The interest rate right now is okay. It's not okay if you owe a bunch of money, and your client, your people that are watching this are going, that guy in Mississippi's nuts. I'm paying 8.5%. Well, that's historical.
Talk to those from the 70s and ask them if they would take 8, 9, 10%.
I promise you they will. Yes.
Right. And that's we have some analysts that she admits she's maybe done it a couple of years, and she says, and it's hard for her to admit when maybe one political administration is not necessarily the fault or the cause of the problem, to say, no, historically, this is still okay. So you don't have to answer that, Ronnie.
Well, that's how politics. We feel that's how we feel at National Land, that historically we're okay. So we're going to keep moving in that direction.
I want to go to farmland for just a minute on who's buying. We've heard from different podcast interviews I've done here and other episodes of the show. I've talked to land people. Who is buying the land? I'm not even going to give you an A, B, or C, but who's buying farmland that you're seeing across the United States right now?
If it's a big tract of farmland, it'll be an institutional buyer. Is the only person who's going to be able to stand that. If a quarter section comes up in Choctaw County, Iowa, or Minnesota, it'll be a local buyer. Usually it'll be a local guy. Usually the neighbor will buy it. But if the neighbor doesn't have a lot of money in what he's already farming, he can cost average that and be fine. So that's who we see buying a medium-sized piece of property, is a guy that has maybe inherited some money and wants to park it somewhere, wants to let it sit as an investment. It depends on what kind of return he can get. I don't really know what the rates are, the rental rates in Iowa, but let's say a guy buys a quarter section for $10,000 an acre. Well, if he can get $300 an acre rent on that, that's roughly 3% return on his money. It's not bad, and he's hedging on the inflationary part of the farmland. It's not bad. Mm-hmm. It's not bad. So that guy still buys.
Are you seeing it's maybe, when you say guy, somebody north of 60, north of 70? Someone on the older side?
We just did another interview with another company, and we were talking about the average age of a farmer in today's world. And the average age of a farmer is 60 years old right now in the United States. And so is that guy still buying? The answer is yes, if it's close to him. It gets back to that old saying, I don't want to buy the whole world. I just want to buy everything that touches me. And that's the way farmers look at it. And they usually can, again, if a guy's got a whole section and a quarter section comes up by him and he has to overpay for it, he will.
Because it cuts down on transportation. It cuts on those costs.
Absorb that.
And they know who their neighbor is. That's right. Okay, so this is a picture behind me of my home farm in Buchanan County, Iowa. Right next to it, I'm trying to think here. I got to look. we're looking over from where this image is taken was up for auction 2 weeks ago. It went for $16,700. About a 251 acre, 2 different sections at 16.7. My understanding, there were 4 bidders, one virtual, 3 within 4 miles of the piece of land. So, I mean, that's my only anecdote of recent time. Now, I'm going to get political on you, Ronnie, for just a minute.
Okay.
There's a push in legislatures and in discussions in the national and in Congress about who can own farmland. There's this concern about foreign owners on land. What are you seeing in that arena?
I've been contacted by both Russians and the Chinese to look at farmland. You know, it's so what do you do? You know, my heart says I'm an American and this is our land and I want to grow our food here for generations to come. But, you know, what do you say when a guy calls up and says, I want to spend $100 million on farmland in the United States and it's not against the law? So do you say, Paul, well, I'm not willing to sell you that. Great. Thank you. I'll call on the next guy. Have a nice day. Click. Have I sold any of it? No, I have not. We have not sold any of it to any foreign nationals. As far as I know, never.
But you've taken phone calls, is what you're saying.
I've taken them in my vehicle and looked at multiple times, but they didn't. You know, it's difficult. It's a different culture. The Chinese are a different culture, and the Russians are a different culture. So it's not that we had communication problems. It's just they just couldn't get the deal done.
Have you given rides to Canadians and Mexicans and those from the United Kingdom, or at least their interests? Because percentage, that's who's the biggest ownership in foreign ownership of U.S. farmland.
Argentinians we have.
Okay.
But I have not had anybody from Canada, you know, or from the United Kingdom show up.
Yeah.
We have not.
Yeah. Do you think that politically that's an issue that you hear about and will continue?
I think it is, and I think we'll continue to hear about it. And I don't know that I don't have the answer. I don't know how to fix it. If they pass legislation that made a foreign national limited the amount of farmland or land that they could own, it wouldn't upset me. I mean, if they said, you know, if it was reasonable, you know, and I don't know that it would upset a lot of people.
Is there certain farm bill policy, or anything that you're watching in Washington that's impacting what you do on a day-to-day basis right now?
You know, the thing I was watching that I heard some scuttlebutt about was the limitations on 1031 exchanges on the capital gains part of that. I watched that pretty close. But I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on, all those politicians love money. So I think that was just lip service to try to appease the voter. But I don't believe they're gonna change the limits on the 1031 capital gains deferment.
And do you also call that, I'm sorry, not you, but is that also the name that sometimes gets the death tax?
No.
Different things, right?
Different thing, yeah. The death tax, of course, is an estate tax that happens when you do die. And then the limits of that are perpetually changing. I think right now a married couple has the first $22 million of a married couple is not taxed. But once you go north of that, the tax rate on that death tax is 50%.
You're not hearing that necessarily that's going to get addressed or changed, or it's beyond lip service?
Paul, I have not heard that.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Well, you're in an industry. You've got your ear to it closer than I. So that's why I asked, Ronnie. But let's talk about that husband and wife that may have. She's connected with land. There's the 250 next door, and they want to buy it, but they're not on the farm. What's your best advice for them right now?
my best advice to them would be to look at it purely as an investment, and no different than looking at buying a building and leasing it to Waffle House or Dollar General or Walmart or whatever. It's what is my return on my investment? That's what they need to look at. As if I buy this farm for $16,000 an acre and I rent it for $320 an acre a year, that's a 2% return on my money. And hopefully that $16,000 increases through inflation and appreciation. Hopefully it's increasing at a rate of 4 or 5% a year. So you take the 5, let's just say 5 for easy math. The land's appreciating at 5. They're getting a 2% return on their investment at 7. That's a fair investment. That's what I would tell them. And if they found a better investment, if they wanted cash and put it in the money market, you can make 5% on the money market.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, right? Let's reverse it. Let's go with the family that sold the 250 for 16.7. The trust that's left, or the one 85, 75, 65-year-old person that's 7 states away that doesn't have any interest to this land, never been there, never seen it. They come into you and say, Ronnie, it's time to sell. But we bought this 50 years ago. What are my options, Ronnie?
That's the very first thing I ask them is, what's your basis in this property? What are you going to do with the money? And about 8 out of 10 times, the landowner will say, are you a real estate broker? Are you an investment advisor? What exactly are you? And, some of them say it's none of your business what I'm going to do with the money. But what I would say to those people that sold that farm is, this is generational money. And you're talking about 250 acres. You're talking about, $20-something million they sold that thing for. If you will exercise the 1031 IRS code, we can sell this farm. You have no basis. You bought it 50 years ago. You're going to owe a third of your money in capital gains tax that's due next year. If you'll apply the 1031 code, we can move 100% of these funds into another investment that's income producing, that's appreciating, that's real estate, that is not manageable by you. So let's take a guy that's 75 years old and his children don't care about the farm. They don't want to hear about the farm. They don't want nothing to do with the farm. It's making a 2% return on their money. We can sell the farm, move the funds to another real estate asset. They can make a 4%, 5% return on that money. It's paid monthly and the asset's appreciating. Whether it's and there's a million things you can move that money into. There's actually farmland Delaware Statutory Trust, to where if you didn't want to be a single tenant owner or single landowner on it by yourself, you could sell that farm, 1031 that money into multiple other farms and on a partial interest in multiple other farms and make a return on your money if you were attached to the land. But there's 1,000 assets you can move that money into.
Yeah, give me. I don't know about this Delaware. What is it? Delaware State Trust?
Delaware Statutory Trust.
Statutory Trust. Where did this come from, and what is it?
Well, it originated in the state of Delaware, of course, and basically what it does is it lets you use the 1031 IRS code to move from one asset to another asset class. So if you say, let's say you own an investment piece of property. Let's say it's 200 acres of recreational land. The trees are growing. You deer hunted on it and you had it, and it appreciated from $200,000 to $400,000. And you get ready to sell it. Well, now you've got a $200,000 capital gain. Mm-hmm. Right? You could take the $400,000 and invest it into something that's qualified as a Delaware Statutory Trust. It'd be a multifamily apartment building in Baltimore, Maryland. It'd be a student housing facility in North Carolina State. Maybe it's a Amazon distribution center in Austin, Texas. Maybe it's a medical office facility in Memphis, Tennessee. You could buy $100,000. You could put $100,000 in 4 different assets if that's what you like. You get to look at a lot of assets, and maybe you put $100,000 in a Delaware statutory trust farmland property in Iowa. So you own $100,000 farmland, and you own a student housing, and then you owe 0 capital gains. You deferred that capital gains exposure until you take the money. So you made $200,000, you put it up for the next generation, and you make a dividend off of it every month. And that dividend varies depending on the asset. Some of them pay more than others. It depends on the performance of the asset. For example, these Amazon distribution centers have fixed rates. You know what you're going to make. They're locked in for 20 years at X number of dollars. The multifamily housing stuff, it fluctuates a little bit based on the market. That's the best hedge I've found against inflation.
So, and how old of a concept is this?
It's probably been around for 20 years. And there's a couple different companies that have kind of the market share on it that we represent, that we go through. And the assets change on a regular basis. Probably monthly we get a new asset in our inventory and start, showing it to clients.
Do you find did that come from, was that a government thing? Was that a private industry that then was allowed to continue and had some tax credit, or not tax credit help, but tax assistance with code?
It's a private industry. It's just private industry.
Yeah. Okay.
And you take a company like Pasco, it'll go out and it'll find like a student housing facility in North Carolina State, maybe that's brand new. Well, they'll buy it, and then they'll put professional management on it and run it like the professional managed multifamily property should be run. And then at some point in the future, they'll sell that asset and move to a newer one or another one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so the market was allowed to work in that scenario.
The market is allowed to work, yes. And it's for hands-off management, it's the best thing I've been able to find. That they're never going to call me from the Amazon distribution center in Austin, Texas, and go, "Hey, Ronnie, the roof's leaking." They're never going to do that. Somebody else is going to manage that.
You'll take other calls, not that one. You don't have to take that one. So. All right. As other avenues that you think that a potential, let's use the second scenario that I said. The family, there's 4 siblings, so that's an equal easy math situation there that they can split. I saw yesterday just something on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, about different scenarios of playing out. The old way was a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, a quarter. But then there was one of those 25% was someone actively engaged in the farm. Have you seen scenarios, or help me on, is there scenarios that can be, we'll call fair, but yet helpful to the person who is on the farm? Because sometimes everybody's equal. All kids are created equal in the eyes of the IRS.
You heard?
But in that scenario, have you seen some creative ways to allow the one of the 4 that's still active in farming?
What I have seen is the one of the 4 wants to continue to farm. You have to run it like a business, even though it's your sister and your brother that have moved to Orlando and to Baltimore. They want to rent the farm, so they rent it to you at fair market value. If that's what you want, if you want to continue to farm, you have to rent that farm from your family. That's the only thing that makes sense. Because what'll happen is the sister that moved to Orlando, if you're renting a farm to your brother in Iowa for $100 an acre a year, that's way below market value. And eventually it's going to start eating on her, that she's losing money, because now she's aging and her kids are going, well, if I could just sell the farm, or if we could get some more money out of the farm, then she starts squeezing brother and it causes infighting. But if he rents it at fair market value, then everybody's good. Now, what happens is one of the siblings decide they want the money out of it, not just the rent. And that's when things start not going well. And you try to get everybody, you see families torn apart over a quarter section, and it's like, this is your family. Are you crazy?
Do you see where something like that happens? 3 are good with the one farming, the 4th wants out. Do the other 2 have to? Do you see it? What's the best case scenario in that situation?
If the other 3 are okay with it, and they have the financial wherewithal, they usually just take the 4th person out. Just give the 4th person their money, maybe leverage the farm, buy the 4th person out, continue to rent it to your, and then everybody goes along happy.
Yeah.
So,
you have? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, as you well know, it's hard to get 4 people to agree that today's Tuesday. So,
or that ice cream is good. I'm lactose intolerant. How dare you say that? Yeah. But and when you get into that financial wherewithal, or you get maybe the kids of the one sibling, so now we're talking a 3rd generation away from the original owner, who might start chirping and saying, "Mom, you're equal to what your brother has been doing. He owes us." Well, does he? But yeah. So in that scenario, is it? I might get myself in trouble at Thanksgiving. Should everybody just sell and start from scratch? Put it out on the market and let the auction do what the auction does?
That's not a bad idea. And then everybody divvy up the money, invest their money wherever they want to invest it. Pay their capital gains and do a DST, whatever they want to do with their money, because it's theirs, and move along. That's not a bad scenario. Usually what happens is the guy that is farming the property, whether he be the cousin or whether he be the brother or whatever, he usually is the one that's going to end up not happy.
Yeah, and the sister, and the sister might be the one on the farm with the husband who's not blood, and
Right.
You run into, then there's a whole nother scenario. All right, this might be a little bit this might make you squirm a little bit in the chair. Like, I haven't done it enough, Ronnie. Long-term land, remote ownership, someone who's 7 states away from that 250. Is that good for the community? Is that good for agriculture when that type of thing happens? At least it's consistent ownership. But is that good for that town and the industry of agriculture?
What I would say about that, Paul, is if you're 7 states away and you're owning property, you need to have a professional land management company managing that farm. You're going to pay them some money, but they need to be maximizing that asset. They need to look at it just like any other asset, hire somebody to manage it, because there's always something going on with a farm. Mm-hmm. Right now it's solar, it was wind, then it's power line easement, and then it's a pipeline wants to come through, and somebody needs to be managing that for you. Does it hurt the community that the owner of the farm is 7 states away? I think no. I think that farm's going to be a farm. In Iowa, that farm's going to be a farm forever. Is what it's not. I say forever. It's going to be a farm for a long time, no matter who owns it.
Yeah.
In Mississippi, it's a little bit different because you can move that farmland into a CRP easement or WRP easement, and then it becomes a recreational track instead of farmland. Look, when they cleaned up Mississippi, when Teddy Roosevelt was down here hunting bears and they started cleaning this land up and dynamiting those big hardwood stumps out of the farmland, and now you go through the Delta in Mississippi, and it's all about 10-year-old hardwood trees planted back through some government program. Don't you know those old timers are like, what? It took me forever to get those stumps out. But in Iowa, it's going to be a farm forever.
Yeah, but you bring up the power, the solar, the pipeline. We're dealing with pipeline stories in a lot of the states that watch our show. Summit has one. There's other carbon pipelines. When the protests happen or the community meetings in a community, and the person who has the biggest right-of-way for that pipeline to go through, it does cause some animosity in town.
Sure it does. And you want to get what you hate to see is the government eminent domain something through a farm, but they will do it. And what you need is somebody, if you're a farmland owner, what you need is somebody that's lived through that before and been to federal court and see what happens when you go to federal court, and try to negotiate the best deal you can negotiate. And I'm telling you, if the government comes to you and says, Paul, we need to run a pipeline down the western edge of your farm and we need 100 feet. And when we get through, we're going to cover it back up and you can keep farming, but we need an easement through there. And you say no, then get ready, because you're fixing to spend a whole bunch of money. And at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but what I've seen is you're going to lose. They may move it. They may move it over here or there, but if they need to come right through the middle of your farm, you just need somebody to help you negotiate the best deal you can get.
And I'm guessing, Ronnie, you've been around enough of the country, I know I have, to seen the stop eminent domain signs are everywhere. They're not just on I-35 from my house 6 miles away. I've seen them in Arkansas. I've seen them in Oklahoma. It happens everywhere, and everybody kind of has that same response to it when they're on the wrong side of it.
And I'm 100% on your team with that. Is it going to happen? It's not going to happen. Do I want it to? Yes. Mm-hmm. And one time they were running pipelines through Mississippi. And of course, not everybody, but a lot of people end up in my office. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I had 2 or 3 people that said, well, I'm going to get a lawyer and I'll take it all the way to the federal court. Okay. Well, I want to go with you because I want to watch and I want to learn what happens. And every one of them had the same result. And the pipeline company would walk into this office right here. And they would say, okay, Paul, we had it appraised and we offered you $4,000 an acre. We'll give you $4,500 an acre for it right now today. If you don't take it, you're never going to see me again. They've sat right at this table and said that very thing. It doesn't make no difference to me, but the offer's $4,500. And if you don't take it, good luck to you. You won't see me anymore. And they move along, the land guys that buy these easements or facilitate these easements. And so I'm with you on eminent domain. I don't like it, but is it for the betterment of the country to have a pipeline from Canada to Gulfport, Mississippi? Maybe. Is it? Well,
yeah, and I guess I didn't really mean to get us both in hot water on that one, but I've seen, the pipelines go through, and ask the people on the side of the rail line that exploded because of whatever product going through that could have gone through a pipeline. And then you hear their side of it, and they might have changed. And yes, and I know that I'll hear it from inside my office from people who are like, that eminent domain is the worst thing. And others will say, yeah, but it was better for my community. So we could do a whole nother thing on that one and get us really in trouble. Ronnie, I'll leave it with this. Is the secret, land as a good investment that used to be, not everybody knew that one. Everybody kind of knows it right now, right? That land is still a pretty good investment.
If you look historically, if you look at farmland, it may tick up, like in the 80s, it went way down, but I mean, it's just, it'll steady tick up. And that seems to be for the last 40 years, 50 years. It's done that. So is it a good hedge against inflation? I think so. Are you going to get as good a return cash on a farm as you are on a Amazon distribution center? Probably not. But what is the appreciation going to do? If we could all peek into the future just a little bit, we'd all be rich. But you don't want to do that. You kind of got to feel what you like to invest in. What I'm really passionate about though is if you do want to sell this farm, or you thinking about you're going to sell this farm, is call a real estate professional now, and let's start making a plan. It's not complicated to this 1031 business is not complicated. This DST trust business is not complicated. But I mean, you're talking about generational wealth, leaving it for your children, and you can do that and defer 100% of those taxes.
And you're talking about having that conversation 1, 2, 5 years ahead, right? Not
Absolutely.
5 weeks.
Absolutely 5 years ahead. Not the day before you close, because the bank's breathing down your neck because corn prices are low. That ain't the time to have that conversation. If it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, and you're thinking about it, yeah, let's start looking around. Let's let you understand what the process is of what we're going to do with the money when we get it. When your parents don't have a lot of money and you're born in Yazoo County, Mississippi, and you don't have any money, you never think about it. I mean, all you think about is going hunting. But one day you wake up and you got a little money and you go, golly, I wonder what to do with it. And you got to figure out where to put it. And that happens a lot to a guy that owns a section of land that he's been farming for 50 years. Quick story, we sold and a guy in Texas out by Possum Kingdom Lake. He owned about 600 acres and he lived in a house that had never had indoor plumbing. He's 85 years old. His basis is zero money in the land. Mm-hmm. And we sold it for $18 million. We DST'd the money. We put it in DSTs. So he started making about $70,000 a month. Started coming to his mailbox in his checking account. And he said, I'm so excited. He said, I'm going to be able to get indoor plumbing in my house. And he ended up keeping about a half a section in his house, got plumbing in his house, and he preserved that money. And it's right now it's invested in DSTs, and he's making more money than he'll ever spend, ever. And he'll leave it all to his grandson. And so that's what makes you feel good about helping somebody like that, and preserving that money. Because if he had to pay capital gains tax on that, golly, he would have owed, $5, $6, $7 million of capital gains tax on it. Mm-hmm. And then what would he have done with the money? Put it in the stock market? Yeah. Lose 20% in the first 6 months? I'm just kidding about the stock market.
Your phone would ring, yes, because your phone would ring if that's what would happen, and right. you hope your phone rings to say thank you. And I'm saying thank you for the time, Ronnie.
You are quite welcome. You need me, let me know.
Appreciate it, Ronnie. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Ronnie, thank you. Appreciate the time. Feedback on the program itself, or you just want to send an email, not to me, but to market at iowapbs.org. It's a pretty easy thing to do. Drop me a line, what you think, what you like, what you don't, what you want to see. We'll see you next Tuesday when another episode of this MTOM podcast is released. Bye-bye.